Welcome to Link by Golf. For those of you joining for the first time, it's great to have you with us. And for those who have listened to the first two episodes, thanks for tuning in again. It's great to have you back. This week, I'm speaking to a man called Sam Robertshawe. I met him when I moved down to England. He's a great guy. He's been playing on Europro in his career. He's also been a caddy on the European Tour, and I think he's got a great story to share. So without any further ado, let's get over to the pod. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Ross. It's been a long time since we've linked up, so I'm really delighted to get the message from you and be welcomed onto the podcast. Considering some of the names you've managed to pluck onto already, I feel very honoured to be on here. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honour for me, Sam. I was delighted that you wanted to come along. I think you've got a great story to share. And on that front, let's get started. So I'd love to find out a bit more for the listeners and I about where you're from, where you grew up, and then how you got into golf, Sam.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up very modest upbringing, Kiwi family, both mum and dad, Kiwis. I'm a military brat. Both my mum and dad were in the military. Met over in New Zealand. Came across to Germany actually in a military exchange back in 1990. I was then born in 91. Did the whole military life, bouncing backwards and forwards between different countries and places every couple of years. But with my dad being a golf mad Kiwi that he is, had me swinging a golf club from a fairly young age. So never really played it seriously until I was about 12, 13 years old. But yeah, that's simply where I'm from. I'm British on my passport, but come from a Kiwi upbringing by blood and born in Germany. So it's a tough question to answer. In all honesty, never really know quite what to say, but I guess having lived in the UK now since 2003, I certainly feel British, and I won't lean too much one way or the other in terms of what I feel in terms of nationality. But safe to say, I follow English football, so that'll give you an idea.
And you've always got the Kiwis as a backup for rugby, so that's not a disaster in itself.
I know, I've got a few to pick and choose from. You know, if England are playing well at footy, it's great. If they're not playing so well at rugby, also great. Let's follow the Kiwis instead. It's all good.
So you were born in Germany. Did you play golf out there at all?
I did a little bit, yeah. I mean, right at the end, so I did 3 separate stints in Germany. So as I say, we sort of bounced backwards and forwards between the UK and Germany. Very, very much a British military presence over in Germany back then. Various sort of British military camps we'd live on and bounce backwards and forwards. And probably only really the last couple of years before moving to the UK in 2003 was I playing golf seriously, but played some stunning golf courses out there. Probably a place called Sennenlager was one that really stood out for me. Not probably one of the best known courses in Germany, but that's where I've got my German golfing memories. And but always a footballer at heart. I played football from a young age, as a lot of young lads do. Kicking the ball around. I played for a couple of decent enough German level teams. I was always going to be a footballer before a golfer. But I just got to a point when we did move over to the UK where I started getting quite good at golf and had to make a tough decision to do one or the other if I was going to do one competitively at a high level.
Brilliant. And so where did you start playing golf in the UK when you moved over?
Yeah, so we moved over in 2003 and Dad got posted, Aldershot. I was actually Deep Cut, sorry, but we lived in between Deep Cut and Aldershot. And over in Aldershot where you and I met Ross, a place called the Army Golf Club. Made perfect sense considering the military background. That's where I had my humble beginnings as a young lad, thinking he's quite good at golf. Started there and stayed there through my whole time as a sort of junior, amateur through to a professional golfer at the end.
And so you joined there around 13. When did you start noticing that you were playing at a potentially different level to some of your friends?
Yeah, within a couple of years, just took a real liking to the game. I suppose when you're doing quite good at anything and you're beating your mates, that's quite exciting. And just through my dad being a golf mad person that he is, I was taken to the golf course at the start of the summer holidays. Left there every day for 10 hours and came home. And by the end of summer, I was, my handicap had shot right down. And within a couple of years, I was off scratch and thought, right, I better pack in this football lark and getting quite good at golf. Let's see what we can do with that.
And playing off scratch, what type of tournaments were you playing in? I guess you were going beyond the club, so what type of events were you getting into?
Yeah, at a certain point I want to test myself, as you do as a young lad. How good can I be? How good am I? You start benchmarking yourself, and to do that, you've got to go and play in bigger tournaments with other good golfers, and did the whole club, then county bits, and had some good success there in the county setup, and then naturally moved into national level tournaments again, where I was still able to compete. Eventually, good enough to win a couple of national level tournaments, and which led me through to sort of playing international level golf.
And you mentioned you won the county level, so what kind of events were you winning there?
So again, my memory fails me here, but I definitely won one of the age categories, and that was kind of the sort of catalyst. In my first year playing sort of county level golf, I can't remember the exact dates or ages, but maybe between 15 and 18, I won a couple of county tournaments and started representing the first team in county. And I was kind of, okay, I'm quite good at this, and can I take it further? And that again, like I said, progressed into those national level tournaments from sort of 15, 16 onwards.
And what type of tournaments were they? Were they scratch events? What kind of events were you playing in for the sort of national level?
Yeah, I was playing as hard as you could, I think, in that national scene. The biggest tournament I won was called the South East of England Links Championships, but I was playing the likes of your top age group events. Carris, you got Carris, McGregor, and Reed tournaments. I don't think I ever played the Reed. I wasn't quite good enough at the age of sort of 14. I think that's 14 and under's the Reed Trophy. But I think the Carris and McGregor. But even at that age, I wasn't 15, 16. I wasn't having the best showings in those. It was really after that point I kicked on. But yeah, I played up to the sort of highest level of sort of English national level tournaments. I didn't really, I guess, do the whole international scene. I was a bit of a late bloomer, I guess, in terms of playing my best golf as an amateur. I wasn't really in the likes of Eddie Pepperell at my age was sort of number one at sort of 16, 17, along with Tom Lewis. And I was a couple of years after that, I started to play some great golf and moved me into those England squads.
And some decent company you're keeping there. Wow, brilliant players.
Yeah, those are the guys I was sort of looking up to, even though I think they're both a year or two younger, if I remember correctly. Maybe Eddie's the same or a year younger, but I remember looking at those guys thinking, God, they're bloody good for the age of sort of 15, 16. I need to up my game, and they sort of spurred me on. That sort of level, very competitive at that age. Hated the fact that someone could be better than me, and that's sort of, I guess, the driver of any good sportsman in sports history is just that competitive desire to be the best and beat the other people around you. And I can thank them for the sort of small bit of success I had in golf. Yeah,
well, and clearly hard as well, Sam. I think that's something that's standing out for me, is just hearing you talking about that there, the levels you've gone through. So you mentioned as well that you won an event in the South East. That was around the time you were in the England squad. So can you just talk about what that tournament was and then what it looked like getting into the England setup?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'd won a previous national level tournament called the SEBO, South of England Boys Open. That was the first one that helped me understand I was going to be quite good at golf and I can compete. And Eddie Pepperell's and the Tom Lewis's and Stiggy Hodgson's at the time, double sort of Walker Cup player, were in those fields. And again, that just kind of spurred me on to keep playing national level tournaments. And then wasn't really knocking on the door for a couple of years after that until I think it was 2010, where I won my first big one. That was the South East of England Links Championships. And just been playing solid all year, not really knocking on the door for any wins, but, good enough to show that I can consistently play at a good level. And then, this tournament came around, a pretty strong field. None of your sort of big names you'd know now. But I think Tyrrell Hatton was still in the field at that point. A couple of other guys who didn't quite make it in the game, but I managed to win that tournament by 8 shots. With the England selectors walking around and watching, and got a little tap on the shoulder at the end. The England, and I think it was England A squad manager at the time, tapped on the shoulder and said, "Great work, I'll be in touch." Didn't really know who he was at the time, if I'm being quite honest. And yeah, get a call up. Sat on my sofa at home, remember it clear as anything, with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, so we've stood the test of time. Called me up and said, "You've been selected for England. Would you like to come and join us?" And something I'll never forget. Just coming off the back of a pretty solid
awesome
career. Yeah.
And you won by 8. So what courses was the Southeast round at that time? What courses were you playing that event on?
Yes, for those that don't know, it's played around Royal St Ports and Royal St George's, two of the top links golf courses in the UK, or at least in England. And you play 3 around one and 1 around the other. Year it would swap around. You play 3 at Royal St Ports, 1 at Royal St George's, and vice versa the following year round. So yeah, just tough conditions, stunning golf courses. Really put your game to the test, and it's the reason I got any real shot at playing England golf. And as I said, the 8-shot margin really, I think, was the thing that was a catalyst of getting me into the amateur level, to show that I could win a tournament, A, at that level, and B, do it by sort of 8 shots was a real statement, and certainly gave me that opportunity to go and play golf for England.
Yeah, I mean, that's a ridiculous margin of victory in such a large event. So how does that tie in with Merriswood? I noticed that you joined Merriswood College. So how did that come about, and what was the kind of timelines when you look at winning that event against being at the college as well?
Yeah, it was in around the same sort of time. And coming from a very, very humble upbringing, my dad's dad, my granddad, was a man of many talents, and one of those was being a maths teacher as well as a vicar. He actually married my wife and I back in 2018. Carpenter, he was a man of many talents, but education was at the forefront of his mind. He was my dad's teacher at school. So that was always prevalent in the family. Education first, don't care how good you are at anything, go get your education first. And, as well as it was very exciting getting into the England squads, I knew that was something I needed to do to get the sort of full backing of the family, to really give the amateur game a shot, and then hopefully the professional game beyond that. And, I'm glad I went and did it. Certainly an invaluable experience going to school and getting some education on your CV. I'm sure it's helped in the jobs I've had later in life, just having that little bit of education in there. So quite an interesting time. I gave up an opportunity to go to America on the back of that, getting that sort of England golf selection, but I certainly don't really look back at that with too much anguish, considering I was representing my country. Yeah,
absolutely. And then just talking about the England setup again, Sam, just circling back there, what kind of opportunities did that open up for you?
It was awesome. As I said, it's something I'll never forget is getting picked for the team. And it did open up, doors in terms of experience and seeing golf in a new way and getting access to, some top end coaching. But my experience in England actually wasn't the best, not only performance wise, but just how I played the game of golf. We're all different, and I very, very much had a Matt Wolff style technique. Took it outside the line, dropped it in. And they were very much of the thought, you must look good, you must be in shape, you must go to the gym, you must eat well, sleep well. So my golf swing wasn't really looked at as something that was, even though it worked well and it worked consistently. That's the reason I got into the England squads. But there was, questions being had around, you should probably swing it a bit more on plane on the way back and these sorts of things. And it had a real detriment on my actual performance, because I was starting to put the club in positions I didn't really understand. And you think you bring it more in on the way back, it gets even worse. You then start dropping it under. I'm a fader of the golf ball. I lift it up, I drop it, but I'm still slightly out to win. And so all these things are very alien to me, and trying to do the right things, be the right person that fits the mold for England golf, it really didn't do any justice. As much as I'm super grateful for the opportunity and to experience and do some amazing things, traveling around Europe and going to these fantastic training camps over in Arcos Gardens in Spain, just one of the best golf facilities I've ever seen, and just being in and around, other talented golfers week in, week out, it gives you a lot of experience and exposure to what the professional world might look like down the line. But yeah, as I said, wasn't the best experience for me as a whole. You'd pee into a pot in the morning. They'd test your hydration levels. It was a bit like a boot camp at times, and I was trying to do all the right things, work super hard, but ironically doing all the wrong stuff in relation to what made me a good golfer. And my roommate and good friend who ended up caddying 4 down the line, Callum Shinkwin, was he didn't care about any of that. He's like, I'm who I am. This is me. I'm not going to change for anybody. It helped that he had a pretty golf swing. But, he'd drink his full-fat Cokes and he'd eat his crap food, and he'd pee into that pot in the morning. It would be bright orange, and we'd be adding water to ours to make it look like we're hydrated. And, look at him now. He's multiple winner on tour and kept being himself. I think there's a lot to be said for that in the game of golf, because it certainly put me probably back a couple of years in terms of my progression as a golfer.
Yeah, and you look and listen to someone like Butch Harmon, and he'll say about people that the golf ball tells them everything he needs to know.
Yeah,
it sounds like people were literally taking a pee in certain situations for you.
Yeah, it was a real shame. You try and do what you think's right at the time in any of these things. New exciting adventure, England golf. Something I'd always sort of dreamed of eventually. Playing good golf through my later teens, thinking I've got a chance of this, getting picked, and you just think it's the pinnacle. And again, I don't take anything away necessarily from England golf, because it did a lot for me in terms of my time there, a lot of exposure to some fantastic golf courses, travel, understanding what that looks like. But you're right, you've got to ultimately understand what makes you a good golfer. And what made me a good golfer was my technique and was the way I saw the game of golf. And that's what got me into the England setup in the first place. So you're right, Butch Harmon, he gets a lot of praise, but I think he's still underrated. He just looks at a guy like DJ. He just says, well, who cares if you got a bowed wrist? What's the golf ball doing? How can we improve that shot plan? And there's a lot to be admired about that. Yeah,
especially when he's tanking at 350 off the tee. I'm sure he's not worried about whether his wrist is bowed or not.
Absolutely.
So from there though, Sam, I'm guessing you must have worked on something slightly different to get to the level of going professional. So what process did you go through to get yourself back on course from your point of view?
Yeah, so eventually got dropped from England, just not performing well enough. Obviously tough to take, but fortunately I went grovelling back to my old coach that had got me to where I needed to be to get into England golf. And, he forgave me and took me back in, and we worked really hard on my game for about a season, maybe half a season, and got it in a good enough place. It wasn't perfect, but a good enough place where I could start to think about playing golf professionally. I really wanted to play in the Walker Cup, but I think that's the goal. As soon as you get in the England squad, it's actually your next step. And you're always looking forward. If you want to be any good at this game, you've got to be thinking what's next. And at that point, it was another year and a bit down the line. So I made the call to actually met a fantastic guy at my golf club, a guy called Dave Cross. He's a bit of a golf philanthropist, had a successful career in his own right as a businessman, and he sponsored the likes of Justin Rose actually through his late part of his amateur career into being a professional. He sponsored Steve Richardson for a short while, and he sort of made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So look, I appreciate you might want to play Walker Cup, but I think you're ready now. No point waiting around. I'll back you if you want to do it. So off we went to Europro Tour, qualifying after going back to my coach and working hard on what made me good, and did enough to get a card, and pursued the professional game from there.
And the thing that's really great there, Sam, is that you were mature enough to go back to the coach and look for support from him when you knew that you'd been successful with him before.
Yeah, it was. I don't think mature was probably the right word. You could probably look at it like that, but I think it was a bit of desperation actually. Nowhere to go. Didn't really know what I'd do with my golf swing. I could get it around the golf course in okay fashion, but not in a good enough place to play professionally. And he's a super nice, humble guy, Jason. Fantastic coach. Again, similar to Butch in many ways, that he just takes you as you are. And he just helps you deliver that club a little bit more consistently, strike the ball that little bit better. And that's his ethos, that's his message. And I think a lot of coaches can gain a lot out of that. But it sounds simple, but it really isn't, because it's understanding the parts of the golf swing you need to improve. And he's just great at building your confidence as well. He's as much a golf coach as he is a psychologist. But yeah, it certainly came from a point of desperation going back there, and glad I did.
And the funny thing is, mentioning Butch there and other coaches, if you listen to them on podcasts or watch them on TV, and players themselves, what often I hear a lot is we're looking at videos from 10 years ago, and the players saying, I'm talking to my coach about how do I get back to what I was doing 10 years ago, because they've gone down the rabbit hole, got completely lost, and then they're trying to get back there where they were in a good, comfortable position and playing well. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a scary one out there, the golfing environment now, with how much access we have to information and opinion. Everyone's different. Everyone's body moves differently, and you might flip open your phone, look at Instagram, and you see a golf swing, and you go, "Oh, I could do that." And all of a sudden, you start to trying to be someone else and doing things that don't come natural to the way your body moves, the way you've learned to play golf, and it's so easily done, so easily done. And you think to that recent interview with Scotty Scheffler, he talks. They say, "How do you stand? How do you keep performing so consistently and doing your thing?" Because you may look at Scotty Scheffler's the way he moves his feet and think, "Well, you wouldn't coach that." But a good coach has seen his ball striking ability, his talent, and thought, "We're not changing that for love nor money." And he says, "I just stay in my lane. I'm not on any social media. I don't accept outside influence. If I see something in the news come up about me or my golf or a golf swing, I just hide it. So my algorithm slowly pushes out anything golf related." And he just does the very best version of him. And, he's an athlete. He's 6'4", whatever it is, and hits the ball a long way. But he stays in his lane. He does the best version of what he can do. And he's number one in the world because of it. Yeah.
And I think the second highest earner in golf is still Jim Furyk. And last time I looked at his swing,
yeah.
I'd love his position at impact. That's the bottom line, isn't it? It's like, what is the ball telling you that you've done versus what does the picture look like?
Yeah, he's just frighteningly good. It's finally consistent. Never forget, I think it was that 59 or 58 he shot, at the age of 40 plus, whatever it was. And it's funny, I put a picture up on my social media of Jim Furyk's swing at a point where I was reverting back to what I knew and that pattern that made me consistent. And I stuck it up next to another photo of a perfect backswing. It was something along the lines of who's got more career earnings, and it's Furyk across the line, clubs coming almost above his head, and people who didn't know golf were like, well, clearly the guy with the perfect backswing, but no, he tripled his earnings. It was something crazy, like $68 million he's earned from the game with a 2 playing golf swing, some people call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the paying side, you turned professional, as you talked about. You went for the Europro Tour. So just walk us through what that process is like. You got backings, but how did you basically get into the tour, and what were the first couple of years like on there?
Yeah, so qualifying's fairly simple in terms of stage one. There's a couple of stages you have to go through. Anyone can enter, anyone at a professional level, even up to a certain level of amateur can enter stage one of Europro Tour qualifying. But really, it's the only route in. If you haven't played Walker Cup and you haven't got exemptions on tour already, that's your path in. You can't just jump straight to the Challenge Tour. You have to qualify for the Europro Tour, which is one of 4 mini tours out of Europe that had Challenge Tour cards at the end of it. So the UK equivalent was Europro. Stage one, I think half the field, I think, go through stage one, and then you go through the final stage, and that's where you get your card. And my game was good enough to get through those few stages. I think I was at Stoke by Nayland in a cold February, snowing outside, and play got delayed by half an hour or something because of snow. And those are some of the things you face in the UK in particular. But yeah, good enough. Didn't quite get a full set of playing rights, but good enough to get a full season. You don't necessarily need full playing rights to play the full season. So that's how we qualified. And then just had a real average, slow start, just finding my feet, I guess, still rebuilding confidence on the back of the sort of England saga, but just getting slightly better each year. I think I had a few stale first years, but then started to find my feet in about year 3 or 4. I started to see progression, the results improving, and yeah, kept going at it long enough to give myself a real shot.
And what were the things that were standing out when you're going through that process? So it's obviously a journey in itself, but what kind of things were happening that were giving you the belief you could keep going in terms of those tournaments and what you were working on?
Yeah, again, it wasn't the biggest success story. My golf playing professional career isn't the biggest success story of all time. I had some reasonable results. I mean, I had 11 professional wins in total across various tours. One of those eventually being on the Europro. I just saw enough improvement each year to warrant keeping on going. And I think, sure, we'll talk about this later down the line, but you got to keep improving each year. I think that's an important factor of golf, because look, you haven't got unlimited time in this game, and in the majority of circumstances like mine, you haven't got unlimited funds. So you need to be able to warrant keeping on playing each year. Your average season on Europro, if you're doing it on a budget, it's probably going to cost you close to 15 grand. And to give you context of that, I think the very, very highest earner for the season earns about 30 grand. So even the very best player at that level is only making about 15 grand for his year's work. So it's very much you have to warrant playing future seasons by getting better. And I was just good enough to do that each year, even with a slow start, and eventually started getting quite good.
And some really top players have come through that Europro Tour as well. I believe Tyrrell Hatton was on it at one point, was he not?
Absolutely right. Yeah, he stormed on, and I think he spoke about it recently in a live interview. At the time, I think first prize was around about 5 or 6 grand, but he said, and Tyrrell, to his credit, he just came storming onto the scene. He was a very good amateur, extremely hot-headed. I've played with him numerous times in tournaments where he's doing his helicopter club throw down the fairway. And he won't mind me saying that. He's seen it. Everyone's seen it all before. He's certainly cooled off as he's gotten more mature and a little bit more money's in his back pocket. That certainly helps. Tyrrell Hatton, Jordan Smith, probably another great example, who's now a top tour player. He's won out there. So it has produced some fantastic golf. I think Aaron Rye is probably one that gets overlooked. I'll never forget playing with Aaron Rye for the first time and thinking, God, he's average. And then, 6-7 years down the line, he's playing on the PGA Tour. So it's a fantastic breeding ground, the Europro Tour, to benchmark your game. And it's a shame it's folded now, but there's other options now available. But fantastic arena for setting yourself up. You play on TV, you got Sky Sports following you around. It really does simulate what you might be facing down the line. And forever grateful that tour was around and had a chance to play on it.
Yeah, and that is what you say, actually. That's one of the things that sports psychologists will say all the time, replicate basically the reality. So for
Absolutely.
a tour player, doesn't matter what the money is, you're playing in a tour event. That's what you're after. You want to be beating people as often as you can, having that experience of travelling around, mostly in this case the UK, but you're still living out of a suitcase and trying to make money along the way.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I can't fault it, and big props to Matchroom Sport for keeping it going for so long, because I know it did make him a lot of money. It was more of a passion project from Barry Hearn to give young guys an opportunity, and Dan Godding, who was the CEO of the tour at the time, was a huge advocate for young talent and trying to develop that. And you could just see they absolutely loved it. So it was a real shame to see it go eventually, but there's some great options still out there for guys looking to play the game. Clutch Pro Tour is one of those, and they're trying to do a similar thing, get the cameras involved and really try and give these guys the best opportunity they can making it on tour.
Absolutely. And you get a strong indication that you had a lot of capability. So in 2017, you won on the Europro at the Grand National Hotel's Irish Masters. So can you talk us through what that was like, what the week felt like, and what kind of place you were in?
Yeah, absolutely. So at that stage, again, I'd just seen a little bit of improvement year on year, but I also wanted to consolidate. I was never naive enough to think about what if. I knew I was good at the game and I had an opportunity to play the game for a living if I just kept getting better. But I'd actually taken the decision, with the UK season only being about 7 or 8 months, took the decision to start my PGA. So I did.
Oh, okay.
I was very fortunate. Yeah, I was very fortunate that I was able to do that in a more condensed time frame, so it didn't really budge into my season. I won't name names, but you're not really meant to do it season long. But I had a very flexible PGA Pro looked after me and allowed me to just condense everything through the winter and play my full season. So I've kind of gone into the end of 2016 just to get a little bit more stability behind me, even though I'd had a solid year. So I've come out the other side of that year with a little bit more, I guess, of a backup plan. which kind of freed me up a little bit. And also, unfortunately, my dad had suffered a little bit with a little bit of mental health. To, I guess, the best way you could describe it is a bit of PTSD through the military process. Nothing really too bad, but had some trying circumstances, which put him in hospital for a little while. And it's amazing, what an experience like that can do for you mentally in terms of helping you understand what's really important in life. You get yourself bogged down in golf. Any golfers listening to this know what it's like to go through a slump, and you're desperate to do well and you want to progress, and sometimes you need something like that to bring you back. And it's a shame that my dad fell unwell, but fortunately came out the side of it in better shape. And that gave those two things really humbled me in terms of my dad getting on well, but then also having that bit of a consolidation with the PGA degree coming in put me in a great mindset. And I came out and won the season opener on the Europro Tour. Came from 6 shots back to post a 7 under birdie free final round to take it by 1. So that was pretty uplifting.
Wow, that's awesome. And on the back of what you've just talked about, Sam, and listen, thanks for sharing. That must have been a really tough time for your dad and all the family. But what a reward in regards to just having that freedom to play.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it was kind of like, I want to do this for my dad. He's in a bad place, and it was real news for him, and a real helping hand in terms of, I think, both of us humbling me a bit as a person, because I'm this cocky young guy trying to tell everyone how good I am at golf, and made me realise it's not as important as you think it is in terms of the grand scheme of life and what really matters outside of your job and what you do for a living. And in terms, I like talking openly about it. It's something that us as men don't do particularly well, I think, and there's certainly been a great bit of awareness over the last 5-6 years about men's mental health and how it's good to talk openly. So he's happy for me to talk about those sorts of things, and I talk about it whenever I can.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's really great that you've done that, Sam. I appreciate you doing that. So that season, what a way to start. So how did the season unfold from there?
Yeah, it was a great catalyst for giving myself an opportunity to go and get my Challenge Tour card, the next step in that journey, and played pretty steady. It's funny how you come in with this humble mindset, bit of PGA on your shoulder, on your back pocket, and then all of a sudden you win, and it's a tough one managing your expectations. I didn't come out and just keep bowling over tournaments. I just kind of had a bit of a mediocre time after that. But it kind of changed my mindset in terms of my bad golf. I was making the cut for the most part, and my best golf I was competing. So I had a pretty solid season, knew I was in and around it all of the year. I knew that I needed a solid finish in the Tour Championship come the end of the year. And I think I ended up 3 shots. Well, one or 2 places on the actual tournament final standings from getting my Challenge Tour card because of how heavily weighted it was at the very top there. It was a real shame. I think had I finished 1 place or a couple of shots better, would have got my Challenge Tour card. But that's life, isn't it? There's a lot of what ifs in life, and it might have done me a favour, who knows? But got me stopping a bit earlier. Yeah,
that's incredible. So where was that grand final held that year?
That was out at Amendoeira in the Algarve in Portugal. Beautiful golf course. It's lost its way a little bit the last few years, but it's a fantastic championship setup. Great for that sort of thing. Tournament championship golf, some big, strong par 5s, tough back line. As I said, actually a good friend of mine picked me on the Order of Merit to get his card, and we still joke about it today. A lad called James Adams. He was having a bit of a tough run himself. He went and played the sort of French equivalent, Alps Tour it's called, French equivalent of the Europro Tour. And he'd had a rough time. He came back to the UK, played 5 Europro Tour events, which is what qualified you for the Tour Championships. He went win, miscut, top 50. Got him into the Tour Championships, and he pipped me by, I think, 1 or 2 spots in the Order of Merit. And had he stayed out the Tour, I think I would have got my card.
Oh wow! Jeez,
that's the fine line.
Well done, mate. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers, buddy. But no, today. But that just shows you the real fine lines of
of course.
I guess second and third tiers of professional golf, and just how competitive it can be.
Yeah, and the thing that people always say in golf is that you'd rather win and miss cut next week and then win again than be really consistent, because you ultimately win more prize money, right? That's what you're there for.
Oh, absolutely. And the way they set it up for TV and for entertainment, for excitement, it's just geared up that way. And I never forget a season on Europro Tour where one lad made every single cut that season, and he finished about 25th in the order of merit, in the top 5 get their card.
Jeez.
People like James, who played 5 events, won 2, missed 2 cuts, and had a top 50, and he got his card. So it's that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
The prize money was very heavily weighted, wasn't it? Like first was 5 to 10,000, and then it dropped down pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was cut in halves, and the Tour Championship was a real exception, which you can look at it in a few ways, but ultimately cost me my card. I think it was 22 grand first prize, then 11, then 6, then 3, then 2. So,
big jumps.
The way they wanted it was you finished top 60. If you just snuck into the Tour Champs at 60th, you could still get a card, which was controversial, but it made it exciting.
Yeah, of course. So 2017 ended up being your best year on Europro, and then after playing another couple of years, you decided to go down the path of professional caddying. So what led you down that path, and then what was it like being in the role of a caddy rather than being a player?
Interesting. So I had a few sponsors unfortunately drop out at the start of my 2018 season. But because I'd had a good year on the Europro Tour, I was able to get a few Challenge Tour invites. So I thought I'm going to go for gold. To be honest, I'm going to go for gold, give it everything I've got. Went and played as many Challenge Tour events as I could, which I knew if I didn't do well would hinder my progress in the Europro. But went out and played as much Challenge Tour as possible. Made half the cuts. Never competed really for an event, and you can't have any more than 7 invites in those tournaments. So it didn't come to fruition. Played. I thought in my head, 2018 season, I'll go back and give Europro Tour one more shot. And see how I fare. Didn't work out. Still made the top 60. Made Tour Championships, but didn't play well enough to get a card. So I'd kind of given myself till then. That's it. That's your final shot. And happy enough to call it a day there, considering I got a long-term partner. I'm married now, coming up on 6 years, and it would have been a selfish decision to keep on playing because we want a family and that sort of thing. And finances were very unstable, and you get to a certain age as a man where your man's pride kicks in, and you really want to make it nice and fair in this day and age. So packed it in and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wasn't the most talented of golfers. I was good enough to get to a certain level, but I was very strategic, very determined, very hardworking. Certainly picked the golf course apart when I went round to give myself the best advantage. And I thought, this could be I think I've got a great skill set to become a caddy. Studied the mental side of golf, very good under pressure as a whole. Just lack of talent, unfortunately, didn't get me to the top. But so I thought caddying would be a great thing to get into. And a good friend of mine, Gary King, took me under his wing. Said he's another top England player during his time as an amateur, and he's won on the Challenge Tour, and wanted to sort of reignite his career, and gave me an opportunity to go and work with him. And unfortunately for him and our friendship for a small while, my good friend Callum Shinkwin called me up 2 weeks into that and said, "Hey, look, mate, I know your best skill set's on the greens." And Callum, for the people that know him, Callum Shinkwin is one of the most talented ball strikers in the game you've ever seen. He said shots I don't think there's probably, I couldn't count on my right hand how many people in the world could play those shots. It's just frightening. Called me up and said, "Got a full card on tour. He needs me to come and help him on the greens. Do I want to go and work for him?" And unfortunately for Gary and I, that's what I needed to go and do to accelerate my career. And that was kind of history beyond that point. Went and worked for Callum for a couple of years and had a lot of fun and success doing it.
Yeah, so in those couple of years, what kind of tournaments were you going to, Sam, and what were some of the experiences that you had on the road?
Well, it was a bit of a ropey start because our very first event together was out in Oman, actually, the Oman Open. And this was right when COVID was lingering around and just starting. And I'd kind of joked, a couple of weeks before that I'd lost my sense of taste and smell for a couple of weeks. And my wife my partner at the time was spoon feeding me all sorts to try and see if I could taste it, vinegar and anchovies, and think funny at the time, but looking back, I actually had COVID. So went out to Oman. Yeah, out to Oman. It was all a bit ropey. Day one, I think, of the tournament. We get a call into the clubhouse saying this thing's going around the world, but we're good to play on. Just be careful, don't get too close to one another. And Callum and I are leading the golf tournament on round 4. And our very first week together, he's putted brilliantly. I've read everything for him. He strokes it great anyway. He just couldn't really read the greens well at the time, and thinking, bloody hell, this could be a one and done. And he had a bit of a ropey finish, 3-putt at a par 5, lost his temperament and finished with a quadruple bogey finish. So very abrupt end to what we thought was going to be a great week. And then, of course, COVID hit.
Ouch.
Yeah, it wasn't a chance to go straight back the following week and try and get some revenge on his poor finish. But COVID hit. And then we were very lucky to actually keep playing through the entirety of COVID, which was after a couple of week or month break.
So what was the gap on the DP World Tour at that time? When COVID started, was it 4 or 5 months or something? It was shut down.
Yeah, I don't know if it was even that long. I think they did an incredible job working with all of the health organisations to actually. It was a reasonable period of time where we couldn't play. I don't remember the exact dates. But I remember us resurfacing at Close House, actually, for the British Masters, and it was played at Close House for our next event together. But Tour did a phenomenal job. We were going in and out of airports with 20 pages of documentation to say we are who we are. We've had 17 tests along the way, not cheap, by the way.
You were having to pay for them as well.
Unfortunately, so the Tour were pretty good. You know, they gave the players an allotment of cash each week. Again, phenomenal from the Tour to cover most of those expenses. But you got your caddy fee every week, which covered all your flying expenses, hotel, etc. And at that stage, you're having to room with your player if you could, if not another caddy. And so Callum was very generous to me over that period of just covering the hotel costs, etc. So we were so fortunate to be out there as people were at home, cooped up inside, couldn't go out for more than an hour, and we were still travelling the world playing in golf tournaments.
It must have been pretty surreal that I know you were in freedom because you're pretty much stuck to the hotel and the golf course and nowhere in between, but it must have been quite surreal having that experience that you're out basically on the golf course and everybody else is stuck inside.
Yeah, it was crazy. You've never seen airports so empty. The roads clear as anything. Not a person in sight, not a single spectator when you get to the events. And I'll never forget rocking up to the BMW at Wentworth, which is the flagship event of the European Tour. And I've been probably the previous 4 or 5 years in the spin where you can't see anything because you're 6 rows deep in people spectating from the outside in. Then all of a sudden you get your first insight into that event from a caddy standpoint, and there's not a soul in sight. It was the most eerie feeling, and they had all the stands up, not a soul in there. It was absolutely bizarre. Honestly, couldn't wrap my head around it. But fortunately, COVID eventually buggered off, and I managed to get the full Tour experience and caddied at Wentworth in front of huge crowds, and that was amazing. Really, really cool experience.
Yeah, and so was that 21 then? You had the full year? Like almost a normal year then.
That's it. Yeah, 2021 would have been the full first proper year. We had freed up towards the back end of 2020. Actually,
okay.
I think it was back end of 2020. Freed up a little bit, depending on which country you're in. We had a few spectators at the Cyprus Open, for example, where we very fortunately won together as a winning partnership.
Oh,
so
brilliant!
Forever.
Wow. Yeah. You need to tell me about that. Keep that quiet.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the highlights of the caddying.
Yeah, let's hear a bit more about that, Sam. Keep that one up your sleeve.
Yeah. So we managed to sneak a win together in the Cyprus Open. I think it was still under some form of COVID restrictions, but Callum had been playing great for a little while. He's very streaky, Callum, because he won't mind me saying this. He's a bit of a lazy git. Again, he's still being himself. He's not doing the treadmill every day and eating perfectly. He just stays himself, and that's a big part of why he's so good. He just never changes for anyone and knows what he's good at, knows what he isn't. And playing 30 tournaments in a year isn't his thing. He just plays 20 to 23 events a year. And anyway, he'd been playing some great golf a couple of weeks prior to that. just steady. And it all kind of just clicked in the Cyprus Open, and a pretty darn good field in the end, considering the circumstances. Managed to finish birdie par, birdie eagle to win, to get into a playoff.
Wow,
which
what
was
a
just
finish that is.
Unbelievable.
Was it Aphrodite Hills as a course?
Aphrodite Hills, you've nailed it. Yep, bang on. Beautiful golf course in the rolling hills of Cyprus. Not far from the main city, Paphos. There, it's only about a 20-minute drive down there. But beautiful course set in the hills. Set up perfectly for a good drive of the ball. Fairly tight, but not particularly long. So if you could hit it long and straight, you were making a lot of birdies. And not often you see the winning score of these tournaments at 20 plus under. And I think we did finish on 20 under. To win the golf tournament. Wow. But yeah, one hell of an experience.
And even, finishing birdie par, birdie eagle is ridiculous, but that, even the par 5 at the end, to eagle that hole is no mean feat at all, under pressure. No mean feat trying to do it from the forward tees, but to do that in DP World Tour setup is unbelievable.
It was incredible. To be honest, we were looking at the leaderboards the last couple of holes, and he only really had one small wobble in terms of he's one of the least phased people I've ever met under pressure, Callum. It's just quite worrying. I think there's something wrong with him, to be honest. But he's still on the 16th tee, I believe. 16th tee, maybe 15th tee, which is the par 4, 20 birdie there. It's a drivable par 4, but he's a very aggressive player off the tee, Callum. Hits driver whenever he can. He's such a great driver of the golf ball. And we're still on the 16th tee. We've got a bit of a hold up, a little bit of a swirly wind, and it's never been a second question to just hit, is it driver? It's just driver, because he can knock out by the green, fairly generous landing zone. And it's the first sort of glimpse of a bit of nerves I saw there, and he looked at me and said, you sure? And you then have a choice. You've got a pretty short spell to get an answer out. And that's where I think my sort of years of studying a bit of golf psychology and being good under pressure myself just immediately reinforced it. I said, no doubt in my mind, that's the club. Just stand up there and give it some beans. And that put my thinking in a good enough mindset to just stand there, make a good swing and hit it in the greenside bunker up and down for a birdie. Part of the next, birdie 17, par 3, got about 12 footer. And I actually read that one. That was a nice one for me.
It's a tough hole as well. Nearly 200 yards downhill or something, eh?
That's 15. I could be getting the holes mixed up here in my head. 17 is a par 3.
Yeah.
16 par 4. Yeah, I'm getting confused on the holes, but you made a fantastic up and down actually on that tough one you're thinking about, which I think might be 15 actually. Downhill right to left part, read that one as well. So he was very kind in the post tournament interview to put a lot of credit on my shoulders to say, he's read 8 or 9 putts where I've needed him in and I've held all of them. So that was really nice to hear from him. But ultimately, he's going to go and do that. I think eventually he's just the most phenomenal ball striker and balls are steel. So yeah, amazing to be a part of that.
And then you said he won the playoff. So who was involved in that?
Yeah, so it was a Finnish golfer who's now a live player. Kalle Samoja, that was his name.
Right, yeah. Heard of him.
Finnish golfer. Yeah, he's now a live tour player. He managed to go and qualify. They had a qualifying series, I think, back in the last year, and he got his card. So he was straight over there. He's all about, earning as much money as he possibly can and can't knock it. But yeah, he also birdied his final hole to, I think he finished birdie to get into a playoff with us. We thought we'd done enough, and he came back strong. And you're then in this playoff situation where all you're concerned about is making sure whatever you got to do, whether that's nothing or a lot, you just got to make sure your guys, breathing good, nice and relaxed, nice and calm, and just give them the full confidence. Just go and send it. I think did a good enough job of that. It was a pretty tight playoff, and I don't know if you were able to see any of it at the time. I know you enjoy watching your golf, but we ended up getting a little bit of a flyer. I think no, not a flyer. Sorry, tried a little baby fade into a flag. He's a crack and drive from memory, and ended up sort of double crossing a 6-iron. He went a high soft 6-iron. It's pitched in the back of a bunker. This is the first playoff hole. Back of a back track, and beyond that, it's out of bounds. So I kind of got a bit lucky that it caught the back lip and came back in. And this is what I mean by balls of steel. Kalle Samoja is was just the one player fault, actually. Yeah, Calais Samoa was in at around 4 or 5 feet away, 4 feet away from birdie. And we're in the back trap, and he's got a tough bunker shot back towards water. Sort of flops it out to about 8-10 feet. And I didn't read this one from him. He just said, look, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm confident. Hit it centre cut from about 8 to 10 feet in our eyes to keep the playoff going. And Calais Samoa steps up to his 4-footer and misses, and he's a champion for the first time. Awesome.
Wow, what a story. What a way to finish off. That's incredible.
Yeah. I won't include the part where I was raking his bunker and I fell backwards into the bunker. Luckily stayed on my feet and got absolutely...
I hope that's in camera. Please tell me that's in camera. Somebody must have it.
It is somewhere on camera, because Thomas Bjorn took to Twitter straight away and absolutely slaughtered me.
Brilliant.
Thought I was trying to distract Calais some more of his putt. And the way that it cuts through the edit, from what you can see, it looks like Callie's about to stand up to his ball and hit it, but he's just arrived at his ball to look at it, if that makes sense.
So it looks like you've taken a dive in the bunkers when he's ready to hit it. Nice. Luckily, the Twitter brigade came to my rescue and gave him hell. That'll make a change.
Yeah, I know. Brilliant. I saw Thomas a couple of weeks later. We had a little bit of a joke about it. So that's one of the cool things I think about being in that inside circle, is just the people you meet and who you become friends with that you never thought you'd ever sort of meet. And sort of Thomas Bjorn was one of them.
Yeah, that's incredible. Brilliant.
Yeah, really cool. Really cool.
So then that capped the season off. So I guess, was the race to Dubai still on that year, or was that the sort of the finish of it?
Yeah, that was pretty much what got us in. He had a pretty good season up to that point. That certainly solidified his place in the Tour Championships, which is just an amazing experience in itself.
At Jumeirah.
Yeah, that's it. You're staying at the Atlantis, one of the best hotels in the world. Because it was semi-COVID at the time, we had to have our own wing of the hotel, even though other people were staying there. We had to stay in our own wing, our own little bubble, but they gave us this incredible sort of section of the hotel where we had our own giant ensuite buffet, and not ensuite, but all-you-can-eat buffet with all sorts of cuisines, our own private pool, beach club. It was just off the charts, and had an okay week. Finished sort of mid-table, 30-odd. Didn't quite push on, unfortunately, but it was his first Tour Champs in a couple of years, so certainly don't hold it against him for not playing his best. But fun story at the end of that week, actually, where Callum's promised me he's booked the car back in the morning. End of the week, we've got an early flight back with Emirates, and being a silver club member of Emirates, he gets a courtesy car included. He tells me he's booked the courtesy car for about 5:15 in the morning, along with quite a few other players. We get down there bright and early. We're looking out for our car, and they're all the same. They all look the same. And each car keeps going by. Mr. Shinkwin, note. It's all other players. And anyway, Cal checks his phone, and he's not hit the reserve button on his phone. So
whoops.
Bollocks, we're going to miss our flight at this point. I actually have to get a cab anyway. Being the nifty thinkers we are, right, next car, we'll just grab that and run. So next car comes along, and the guy winds his window down, poke my head in, and he says, "Mr. Reed?" I was like, "Yep, that's me. Patrick Reed." He's playing that week.
Couldn't harm to a nicer guy.
I know. We knew Patrick Reed's car from the courtesy car from the hotel back to the airport. And
the guy, American accent was on point.
It was just, you couldn't write. It was brilliant. And we're 5 minutes from the airport, and the taxi driver gets a call, or the courtesy car driver gets a call.
He did.
And there's a lot of shouting going on. And Cal just nudged me and says, "Pretend you're asleep." This guy turns around, starts shouting at us. Well, what do you mean? I didn't say I was Mr. Reed. Guy's probably lost his job on the back of that. I felt terrible. But we got to the airport, we made the flight, and we can say we nicked Patrick Reed's courtesy car. So that was good fun.
Brilliant. That is a superb story. A lot of people like that one. Brilliant. So then you caddied for another year on tour, Sam, is that correct?
Yeah, I did about almost 3 years in total. Adam and I, we played all the way up. So we worked together all the way up to the end of the Scottish Open in 2021, I believe. So it would have been 18 months. I think we worked together.
Right.
And we just had some friction, unfortunately. He gave me that incredible sort of honour incredible accolade of saying I helped him with his putting, and there's a big reason as to why he'd won and why he's had a lot of success that year. And Callum's a super confident, self-assured guy, and it came out that following year, opening event at Abu Dhabi, and he said, "Look, Sam, I'm happy on the greens now. I don't need you." We kind of just eventually had a bit of conflict of interest, conflict of opinion, things that, Cal, we've had such a good year on the basis that you've putted well and I've been helping you on the greens. And he sort of went the other way and said, "Look, I'm pretty confident you've taught me everything I need to know. I'm good to go." And he didn't play bad golf. We just butted heads a bit. And I think for our friendship's sake, we eventually parted ways. And I went and worked for a couple of different guys over the following 12 or so months. And still had a fantastic time doing it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and those relationships must be tough. I mean, COVID, first of all, you're spending every day in each other's pocket, although it must have been great in some ways that you're outside and having some level of freedom, but you're also effectively stuck with each other. So if you're not getting on, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's a real interesting dynamic. I think COVID obviously accelerates that caddy-player relationship. So luckily we're good mates and we get along really well, and it wasn't really an issue. We'd stick our PlayStations everywhere we went, and that kind of kept us entertained in our downtime, considering we couldn't go or do anything. So I managed to turn him into a fairly accomplished Call of Duty player, because that was a game I played a lot growing up, and we had great time, great memories. But it's kind of you're with it. It's like a marriage, right? You spend it every single day with each other, and we kind of learned the hard way that it's kind of good to room apart at times. But neither of us were kind of ballsy enough to say, "Oh, I just want to room on my own this week." You didn't want to upset each other, and it takes its toll eventually. And I think it's important that you do, as players and caddies, stay separately, and that is the case for 99.9% of player-caddy relationships. So that certainly played its factor, and but certainly no regrets looking back. Had an absolute blast.
Yeah, and I guess you're still on good terms with Callum, which is the main thing.
Yeah, unfortunately so. I speak to him every day for my sins. But no, he's a good lad, Cal. He's one of a kind, and I love him for it. But we do wind each other up a lot. That's for sure. He's great fun.
Brilliant. So, final question, Sam. You finished up your caddying career. You've moved into sales now, and you told me earlier this week when we caught up briefly that you're really enjoying the role you have. Given you've got all this experience as a player and a caddy, what would your advice be for anyone that's aspiring to be on tour and play for a living, given what you've gone through and what you've seen with yourself and then Callum and others?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been asked this question a few times. I think one of the most important things is to be able to benchmark yourself as early as possible against your age group. I think that's a great prerequisite for moving through the ranks of amateur golf, or even club, county, international, professional level golf. I see a lot of guys come out and play these mini tour events. They've not really played much of the amateur scene, and they've gotten down to 3 or 4 handicap. They turn professional, and they turn up at sort of 22, 23 years old with a little bit of financial backing, and they're wasting their time. I feel harsh saying it, but you need to have the confidence to play at the level of the DP World Tour or PGA Tour. You need to not even have a second doubt, that you're one of the best in your age group growing up. So always be benchmarking yourself. You need to be in the game early. I know there's a few exceptions to the rule, with the likes of Nick Faldo starting a bit later in life, but you don't see many of those anymore. So the advice I would give is to get in against your peer group, against your age group, as early as you possibly can. Start benchmarking yourself, because you'll cause yourself a lot of pain and waste a few years of your life if you're not certain that you're at least competing at the age level. I mean, I've packed in the game at 27, and that if I was to give myself advice, I'd give myself that advice earlier on. If you're not knocking on the door of your age group or your peer group, during your late teens, early 20s, then it's probably a good indicator to just really enjoy the game at a high level. It takes a big man to take a step back, and it was a tough decision for me eventually. But on reflection, having seen the DP World Tour and the sheer level of ability and the confidence of these players, and there's just no doubt they're going to hit the shot they're looking to hit. And even if they don't, they just shrug it off because they know they're going to do it on the next one. And that's something I didn't have the whole time I was playing. And that's the advice I would give, is just benchmark yourself early. You need to be feeling confident for a long time before you get to tour. That confidence doesn't just come overnight. So, and that comes through beating the guys at your age group, then playing professionally and doing well and winning. So yeah, that's about as good advice as I could think of in the here and now.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, especially the competitive piece and judging yourself by how you perform as a competitor. You having the skills is one thing, but when you're playing against people that are, even if they're a higher level, if you can raise your game, that's a good sign as well. And as you say, it's just about continually doing that and making sure you're stretching yourself. Really good advice.
That's it.
So Sam, listen, thanks. It's been amazing listening to how you've got through that journey in life, and you've got a long time to go and plenty of great memories to come. So thanks for taking the time with me. I'm sure everyone will enjoy this, and I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely no problem, Ross. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Sorry for that. I was a bit too self-indulgent, but it's nice to roll back the clock and talk about it every now and again.
No, at all. You've been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Sam.
No problem, Ross. All the best.
Well, what a great insight from Sam into life, chasing the dream of being on tour, and then moving into caddying, and then further on in life, changing his career into sales. Really enjoyed hearing from Sam. I hope you did as well. I've got more guests coming up soon. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you've got any feedback, please send it to linkedbygolf@yahoo.com. You can catch me on Instagram, linkedbygolf2024. In the meantime, have a great day, and you'll hear from me soon. Bye bye.